I heard there was this secret unit, the 160th Special Ops Aviation Group.
We're able to fight off the enemy for maybe 10 minutes.
We took down a terrorist camp that was about 100 guys, the most advanced modern aircraft out there in the Army.
That was probably the first glimmer of hope.
Every day when I come through that door and see the pictures of the kids on the walls, my kids could be on the wall.
America is at war.
My name is Clay Hutmacher. I spent almost 41 years in the military. I did 6.5 years in the Marine Corps, joining when I was 17 years old. I got picked up for warrant officer flight training in the Army. Almost the entirety of my time in the Army was in the Special Ops world. I retired as a Major General in September of 2018 and immediately took over the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. This September it'll be 6 years ago, where I serve as the President and CEO of the Special Ops Warrior Foundation. I moved all over as a kid. My father moved somewhere else, and I wouldn't say we were estranged, but we were strained. And it wasn't him, it was me, frankly. I was a typical, rebellious teenager. So I ended up with a foster family in Lake Stevens, Washington, the Williams, which Charlie was a Marine in the Korean conflict. So, I listened to his stories. He was an engineer, combat engineer in the Marine Corps. And in '77, I was like, look, I'm on a road to nowhere. I'm behind in my schoolwork, part of it just because, frankly, I didn't give a damn. Went to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. A little rude, for sure. Wasn't the warm embrace that I was expecting from the Marine Corps. It was sink or swim, pal. When I watched a lot of people sink in basic training, It was really a seminal moment in my life. I graduated and was assigned to be an Amtracker, MOS 1833. My recruiter said, hey, if you're from the West Coast, they're probably going to station you at Pendleton. And of course, what do? They stationed me at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I stayed in Camp Lejeune for about a year. Then I got transferred to Okinawa, Japan. I did a year on Okinawa, 79 to 80. I re-enlisted, and I got assigned to Marine Barracks, Whidbey Island, Washington, as a Marine security guard. If you're on a Navy base as a Marine Barracks security detachment, you have your own enlisted club. You have your own all ranks club, basically. And ours was the Globe and Anchor, and it was built in the corner of our barracks. So I made extra money working as a bouncer in there. And there was a Marine from a reserve Huey unit that was there at the time. And he had a pamphlet with a picture of a cobra hovering over the trees with mist coming up, and I just pointed to it. I said, what's the deal with that? He goes, oh, it's this Army Warrant Officer flight training program. And I was like, really? And I started going through the process to apply. Got discharged at 6.5 years. An Army recruiter picked me up, drove me down to the MEP station in San Diego. You do Warrant Officer Candidate, which is about a 6-week course. And then you start primary flight training. So while we were going through primary flight training, learning how to fly a helicopter, which was very challenging, we still had to do all the officer candidate stuff. Our rooms had to be ready for inspection, I graduated in June of '85. I was high enough up in my class rankings where I got to select a Black Hawk, which was one of the newer airplanes then. The most advanced modern aircraft out there in the Army. I was originally on orders to Germany, but I swapped with a guy to go to Fort Campbell just because I heard there was this secret unit there, and that's where I wanted to go. The 160th Special Ops Aviation Group. Didn't know anything about it, didn't know if I was good enough.
The 160th was formed in the early 80s after the hostage rescue attempt in Desert One, which was the Iranian hostage situation. We were not prepared for that, and the government realized we needed a dedicated resource for helicopters to support these very complex, sometimes long-range missions. And Clay was right about the same time. He actually got there a little bit ahead of me. We had met each other, both had an interest in that sort of thing.
When I got there, they'd been around since, officially probably 4, 5, 6 years. Kept going over there and they just kept blowing me off. You don't have enough experience, go back and keep flying. That motivated me. And so I applied to go to Officer Candidate School, shaving my head again. It was the third time I've had my head shaved. And the 160th said, okay, we'll give you a shot. We don't think you're gonna make it, but we'll give you a shot.
The mission's more demanding, the training is more demanding. Even after you're already perhaps an instructor pilot or a pilot in command, when you get to the unit, you're basically starting out as, at zero.
But I went to the 160th, I did a short stint as, inventory and supply and all that kind of stuff. Then I got moved over to one of the flight companies. I was a platoon leader. And going back to my sort of inclination to be an attack pilot, there was an effort to field an armed 60 called the DAP. Initially that stood for Defensive Arm Penetrator.
I mean, literally duct taping things to the helicopter to see how it worked.
We had Little Bird guns, but that's the only thing we had. And the problem with the Little Bird guns was an airspeed and range limitation. We had 2 airplanes initially that were modified, and then we deployed, to Operation Just Cause down in Panama.
Fellow citizens, last night I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama. No president takes such action lightly.
Just Cause became the first opportunity to potentially use that armed version of Black Ops.
We had 1 armed 60 down in Panama. And we had our own pallet of ammo, but they wouldn't use us to shoot. They made us do assault work. It was great. We were fast roping SEALs and the Army Special Ops on targets. It was, I thought it was the biggest thing I was going to do my entire career.
That's probably the mission I'm most proud of in terms of how complicated it was, how many things were going on simultaneously, and how well it all turned out. We took some losses. That just happens in combat. It's hard to avoid them completely, but when you think about, it was a hostage rescue, it was an airfield seizure, it was, multiple airfield seizures. You had every element within Special Operations engaged on that mission, and it was mission success.
The Little Bird gun guys, they would swing by the warrant officers, especially irreverent as they are. Hey, LT, what does DAP stand for again? Didn't actually participate, didn't attack Panama. They were brutal. I had a good sense of humor about it. I laugh about it. And then we came back from Panama. Of course, what happens right after that is Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait.
We were going to rescue the hostages that the Iraqis had taken. They were being held in the Hilton Hotel in Kuwait City. Our mission was going to be to rescue them. And we practiced and practiced and practiced. We're about to deploy, and the Iraqis released the hostages, which is great. That's a perfect outcome, but that left us without a mission.
We were sitting there in the wings waiting to get called. And what ultimately got us brought into theater was Saddam Hussein was shooting the Scud missiles into Israel. And Israel was saying, hey, look, we're getting bombed in Haifa and other places by these Scuds. You better do something about it or we're going to come in there and we're going to take care of it ourselves.
The concern was if the Israelis were brought into the conflict, that would disrupt the whole coalition because of the whole conflict between Israelis and the Arab nations. It was a priority to stop those missile attacks so that the Israelis would stay out of the fight.
So there were ground elements that were, operating well behind enemy lines, and then we had 4 DAP aircraft over there. So we had 2 that were on QRF, Quick Reaction Force. So if one of the ground elements got engaged, they would fly up to provide air support, and then the other team would go up in these hunter-killer missions, just looking for them.
So Clay and I were actually both flying the Armed Blackhawks, but we were on opposite teams.
And we engaged multiple scuds. We were shooting a scud one time, and this Marine captain says, "Hey, Lieutenant, you know that if you hit the fuel cell on this thing, like we could see the explosion from space." And I was like, note to self. Okay, hey, thanks sir, appreciate the tip. We'll back off. So thank God my inaccuracy or whatever none of those things blew up, because otherwise you'd be interviewing somebody else here right now.
We got tagged with going to Somalia to capture Muhammad Farah Aidid, who was the leader of the Hutmacher clan. They were attacking relief organizations, they were stealing food supplies. Unfortunately, by the time I get shot down, there's no assets left. Randy Shugart and Gary Gordon are really the only ones who are available to do anything. And they were not asked to do it, they volunteered to do it, and that's really the significance of their action. We're able to fight off the enemy for maybe 10 minutes. I mean, we are vastly outnumbered, and they're both killed along with the rest of my crew, and I get captured. And Randy and Gary are posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. So, you know, just it's the most courageous thing I've ever seen in my life. I spent 11 days in captivity. The deed had said he wanted a prisoner, and I was the only one still alive.
General Downing voluntold me, hey, you're going to go fly with the Air Force Special Ops guys as an exchange pilot.
So when this is all going down, he's actually an exchange pilot with Air Force Special Operations Command. So he's still an Army aviator, but he's assigned to an Air Force unit. When all this happens and he gets tapped to be with my family and, you know, help sort of run interference and be the conduit between my family and the unit, you don't ever expect that the media is going to be camped out on your front lawn, I guess. And people just start acting weird, and you know, so he was in the middle of all that, and I appreciate him tolerating all that.
I married my squadron intelligence officer, Amy. We had one son, and when she got pregnant with our second, I mean, I was deployed all the time, and our kids were being raised basically by daycare. And we both had a problem with it, but she, you know, sacrificed her own career to raise our kids, and she did great. 9/11 happened while I was in the classified assignment. And as soon as I got back to the 160th, and I went right to Afghanistan in 2002. But I flew combat missions at the controls numerous times over there. But primarily my role was air mission commander, oftentimes in the aircraft. And man, we got busy. We did a op called Operation Reindeer. We took down a terrorist camp that was about 100 guys in there with a couple of platoons out of 2nd Ranger Battalion. Great operation. I can tell you a mission's going to be a success or failure based on what happens in the planning room before you step to the aircraft, right? I wasn't at a set of flight controls that night, but I controlled the flight. We had Little Bird guns, we had 60s, we had MH-47s, close air support from F-16s, an AC-130 involved. I mean, it was a very complex mission. In my entire military career, the most rewarding and most challenging mission I ever flew was Operation Reindeer. You know, I used to tell ground guys when I go on a mission, hey, if we put you in, we're coming to get you. We will never leave you. We will never do that. If we put you in, we're going to be there to get you out. I aggressively recruited ground special ops guys because they understood what was happening on the ground. They had an empathy for what was happening on the ground, and I knew they would fit right into our culture of being there no matter what. Our pilots in the 160th, their level of experience is off the charts from not only other Army aviators, but from any other, I would contend, any other rotary pilots in the Department of Defense. And that's not, you know, I'm not being brash or bragging, it's just a fact.
And really the credit goes to those early guys because they're the ones who set the standard, they're the ones who came up with all those early tactics, techniques, and procedures that became the foundation of what's still done today. I mean, for the most part, it's an amazing organization, and to be a part of it, it certainly lived up to my expectations. I can tell you that.
And when I made 1 star, they sent me over to Afghanistan, and I stood up the Afghan Special Mission Wing. I did the better part of a year over there in Kabul, and we were standing up a mini limited 1/60th light capability to support Afghan commandos and special forces in their missions. Ultimately, I made a decision, hey, I think it's time to retire. I personally never regretted that decision. You can look at your opportunities to command and to serve in one of 2 ways. You can be regretful that they're over. You can maybe feel bitter that you didn't go farther. For me, I always chose to be grateful. And grateful that I had the opportunity to serve in Special Ops. Grateful that I could command 1st Battalion and command the 160th, command 5158, and have the great go to Korea, have all those jobs. And frankly, grateful that I was able to serve at the 2-star level. Not bitter that I didn't make 3-star or 4-star. I was surrounded by officers who were much superior to me, in my opinion. I wasn't planning on running a nonprofit. It wasn't that I got out, and planned that. I was approached if I wanted to be considered for this job. And when I found out that it was the Special Ops Warrior Foundation, easy decision.
We trace our roots back to Operation Eagle Claw, the attempt to rescue hostages being held in Iran. The mission ended at a place in Iran called Desert One with a helicopter and aircraft crash that took 8 lives of airmen and Marines, 17 children left behind. The survivors of the mission made a battlefield promise to take care of those kids and make sure they got an education.
What's unique about this organization is we start in preschool, we go all the way through post-secondary education. Depending on the age of the child and when they enter our education pipeline, we spend between $100,000 and $150,000 per child.
Being in the community, you have friends whose husbands perished in accidents or in combat, and you're there for them, and you go through all the motions, but you just don't truly know what it's like until you experience it yourself.
The support at the initial loss is great, and it's evident, and they can feel it. But as time goes on, that support kind of wanes, and it can go away, and there's only so many outreaches and foundations and support that will remain there constant, and we want to be one of those.
Rob had been gone for 7 months. He left when our youngest was exactly 3 weeks old. I just remember thinking, we're past that hump. He's going to be coming home soon. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and when they knocked on my door, that light was gone. And then I remember thinking, Rob was really big on education. He was always saying to me, your kids are going to go to school. Our kids are going to college. So many things go through your head, like, oh, we can't create any more memories, and probably should have taken some more photos. And then it came into my mind, like, how am I going to put these kids through college? They're all so young, and we barely started saving.
The unique thing about Special Ops Warrior Foundation is we represent an enduring commitment to those families that have given, that have sacrificed greatly for our country. We proactively reach out to those families to provide that support. And once they fill out their contact sheet, I don't even want to call it an application because it's not an application. They're already approved.
And then I think it was within the first week that I got a call that Special Operations Warrior Foundation was going to provide the children with scholarships.
Preschool funding, unlimited tutoring, private school tuition assistance. We pay for their college visits. We pay for their college applications fee. And their college visits are for them and a guardian. And it's personnel from all the services. It doesn't mean just operators or just pilots. If you're an intelligence analyst, you're an administrative person, you're a logistics person, you're in the unit, we treat them all the same.
Every day when I come through that door and see the pictures of the kids on the walls, my kids could be on the wall. And somebody like me would be taking care of them.
These kids have been through a lot. You think about it, and they've lost a loved one, almost all of them in the service to their country. A lot of them are in single parent homes. So there's challenges there. And I think this cradle to career program that we have gives these kids the tools over an extended period of time to reach their full potential.
That was probably the first glimmer of hope that I had, because among all the sadness, that was something that I didn't have to worry about.
Our mission and our values align perfectly with Black Rifles.
I looked at their mission statement, I liked what they were doing, they're edgy, so I sort of like that. They're committed to serving causes greater than themselves, and that's what it's all about here.